My sister tried to force my grandma into my basement so she could steal my house. Now she's homeless and grandma's a gaming champion. Hi everyone. Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. Original post, AITA for refusing to give up my basement rec room for my grandmother? I, 26M, need some perspective here because my family is making me feel like the worst person alive. I bought my house 2 years ago, a modest 3-bedroom split level that I've been fixing up. The finished basement was the main selling point for me. I converted it into my personal space, gaming setup, home theater, minibar, the works. It's where I decompress after work and hang out with friends. My sister Sarah, 28F, has been increasingly vocal about our grandmother's, 78F, living situation. Grandma currently lives alone in her apartment, and while she's mostly independent, she's been having some mobility issues. Sarah keeps bringing up how unsafe it is for Grandma to live alone, which I understand, but here's where it gets complicated. Last week, Sarah came over and dropped a bomb. She walked through my basement, taking photos and measurements, then announced that it would be perfect for Grandma. Her plan: convert my rec room into a grandmother suite, install a proper bathroom, there's already a half bath, and add a kitchenette. When I asked where I was supposed to go, she looked at me like I was being deliberately obtuse and said, "You have the whole upstairs, Michael." The thing is, I work from home 3 days a week. My office is upstairs. My bedroom is upstairs. The kitchen and living room are upstairs. The basement is literally the only space that's just mine. When I pointed this out, Sarah's response was, "Well, you'd be right there if Grandma needs anything. It's perfect." That's when it clicked. This isn't just about giving Grandma a place to stay, it's about making me her live-in caretaker. When I brought this up, Sarah got defensive and said I was being selfish, that family takes care of family. I asked why Grandma couldn't move in with her, and she had a million excuses. Her apartment is too small, it's actually bigger than mine. She travels for work, maybe once a month. Her building doesn't allow elderly residents, complete BS. The real kicker. Sarah started telling other family members her version of events. Now I'm getting calls from aunts and uncles about how I'm abandoning Grandma in her time of need. My mom is trying to stay neutral but keeps making comments about how the basement would be so nice for Grandma, and how it would give you peace of mind having her close by. I love my grandmother. I visit her every Sunday, take her grocery shopping, and help with her appointments. But there's a huge difference between being a supportive grandson and being a full-time caretaker. I'm 26, working on my career, trying to date, and living my life. Is it really selfish to not want to convert my home into an assisted living facility? The manipulation is what gets me. If Sarah had come to me honestly and said, "Hey, we need to figure out Grandma's living situation," I would have been happy to discuss options. But this whole orchestrated plan where I somehow end up as the default caretaker while giving up my personal space? That feels like I'm being set up. What really bothers me is how calculated this all seems. Sarah didn't just suggest this casually, she came prepared with measurements and plans. She'd clearly been thinking about this for a while, maybe even discussing it with other family members before approaching me. The fact that she immediately went to the extended family when I didn't immediately agree tells me she knew I'd have objections and prepared a pressure campaign. I keep thinking about all the times Sarah has pulled similar stunts. When we were younger, she'd volunteer me for things without asking, telling our parents I'd agreed to help with yard work when I had plans, or promising her friends I'd drive them places. But this is on a whole different level. This is my home, my life, my future she's trying to rearrange. The financial aspect is bothering me too. Who's paying for these renovations? The bathroom expansion alone would cost thousands, not to mention the kitchenette installation. When I brought this up, Sarah waved it off, saying we'd figure it out as a family. Translation: I'd probably end up footing the bill for renovations I never wanted in the first place. And what about the ongoing costs? Increased utilities, groceries, medical supplies, potential in-home care assistance, all of that would fall on me. Meanwhile, Sarah would continue living her life unchanged, maybe visiting once a week to look like the caring granddaughter while I handle the day-to-day reality. I've been lying awake at night thinking about worst-case scenarios. What if Grandma's health deteriorates? What if she needs round-the-clock care? What if I need to travel for work or, God forbid, want to take a vacation? Would I be expected to arrange and pay for respite care? Would Sarah step up then, or would I get more guilt trips about abandoning family? The dating aspect is huge for me too. I'm finally in a good place personally and professionally. I've been seeing someone for a few months, and it's going well. How do I explain that my grandmother lives in my basement and I'm her primary caretaker? That's not exactly second date material. I can already imagine the judgment. Either I'm a saint who can't have a personal life, or I'm the guy who put his grandma in the basement. Am I the asshole for refusing to go along with this plan? Update 1. 2 weeks later. I can't believe I'm back here already, but things have escalated in ways I didn't expect. First, thank you to everyone who validated that I wasn't crazy for seeing through Sarah's manipulation. Your comments about elder care dumping really opened my eyes. After my original post, I decided to have a family meeting to discuss Grandma's care properly. I prepared a whole presentation about different options: assisted living facilities, in-home care, rotating family support, etc. I even researched costs and found several nice places near us that specialize in senior care with varying levels of independence. The meeting was a disaster. Sarah showed up with floor plans. Floor plans of my basement. She'd apparently hired someone to draw up renovation plans without my knowledge. She had everything mapped out: where Grandma's bed would go, right where my gaming setup is, how they'd expand the bathroom, where the kitchenette would be installed. She even had contractor quotes. But here's the part that made my blood boil. She'd been in my house while I was at work. My neighbor confirmed seeing her car in my driveway last Tuesday. When I confronted her, she said Mom gave her the spare key for emergencies, and this qualified because Grandma's situation is urgent. I found out she'd already started moving things. My vintage arcade cabinet was pushed to the side, boxes of my stuff were organized into piles, and she'd put sticky notes on things marking them for storage or donation. She touched my personal belongings without permission and was actively planning to dismantle my space. She'd gone through my things thoroughly. My collection of retro games was sorted into keep and sell piles. My sound system had been unplugged and moved. She'd even measured my couch and left a note saying it wouldn't fit Grandma's aesthetic. The audacity of deciding what belongings fit what aesthetic in my house was breathtaking. The family meeting devolved into chaos when I showed everyone the security footage of Sarah in my basement. Yeah, I have cameras down there, too much expensive equipment not to. The footage showed her spending over 2 hours down there, taking pictures, moving things, and at one point, she was on the phone gesturing around the space like she was giving someone a virtual tour. Several family members were horrified that she'd entered without permission, but Sarah tried to spin it as preparing for the inevitable and being proactive about Grandma's care. Then Grandma spoke up. Plot twist: she doesn't even want to move in with anyone. She likes her apartment. She's been looking into senior communities where she can maintain independence but have support when needed. Sarah had been pressuring her, telling her she was being stubborn and not thinking clearly. Grandma revealed that Sarah had been visiting her multiple times a week, each time with new horror stories about elderly people who lived alone. Articles about seniors who fell and weren't found for days. Statistics about elder fraud. Medical emergency scenarios. She'd been running a fear campaign on our grandmother for months. When I asked Sarah point-blank why she was so invested in this specific arrangement, the truth finally came out. Her lease is up in 3 months, and rent in her area has skyrocketed. Her plan was to move into my main floor while I relocated to the basement with Grandma. She figured once Grandma was established in my house, I'd naturally take on the caretaker role, and she'd have a free place to live, to be close to Grandma. She had it all figured out. She'd take over my upstairs bedroom and office, claiming she needed the space to work from home and be available for Grandma. I'd move into the smallest bedroom upstairs, or more likely, create a bedroom space in the basement alongside Grandma's area. The cherry on top. She'd been looking at my property tax records and calculated that I could afford to support all 3 of us with my current salary. The room went silent when she admitted this. Even the family members who'd been on her side looked uncomfortable. Uncle Robert, who'd called me selfish just days before, actually apologized on the spot. I changed my locks that night. I also installed a smart lock system that logs every entry and sent a clear message to the family group chat. Anyone entering my home without explicit permission will be considered trespassing. Sarah is now playing the victim, saying I'm tearing the family apart over stuff, and that I care more about my toys than Grandma's well-being. She's been posting passive-aggressive memes on Facebook about family loyalty and elder care. But at least now Mom and Grandma see what's really happening. The aftermath has been rough. The family is divided. Some still think I should have been more flexible, while others are appalled by Sarah's behavior. Thanksgiving is going to be awkward. But the thing that hurts most. I was actually starting to warm up to the idea of helping Grandma more. Maybe having her stay over sometimes, or converting part of the basement into a guest suite she could use when visiting. But Sarah's manipulation has poisoned the whole thing. Now any genuine offer to help will look like I'm caving to pressure. I'm meeting with Grandma this weekend to tour some senior living communities together. Just her and me. Sarah is not invited. We're also going to have a long talk about what she actually wants and needs, without anyone else's input or pressure. I'm still processing the betrayal. It's not just the trespassing or the attempt to take over my house. It's the months of manipulation, the lies to family members, the complete disregard for my autonomy. Sarah saw my life as something she could rearrange to suit her needs, and she was willing to use our grandmother as a tool to do it. Update 2. 1 month later. This will probably be my final update because I'm exhausted from this whole saga, but I figured I owed you all a conclusion to this mess. After my last update, Sarah went nuclear. She created a Facebook post, with carefully edited Ring doorbell footage, making it look like I was physically blocking her from checking on preparations for Grandma. The video conveniently didn't show her trying to force her way in with boxes of renovation supplies. The post went viral in our extended family network, and I woke up to dozens of messages calling me heartless. She'd added a sob story about how she'd spent her own money on renovation plans, true, because I'd promised to house Grandma, false, and was now backing out, leaving both her and Grandma in dire straits. She even included photos of Grandma looking frail and sad, photos that were actually from when Grandma had the flu last year. I was getting messages from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years, former family friends, even my high school ex-girlfriend's mother, still Facebook friends, apparently, about what a disappointment I'd become. Someone suggested I should be ashamed to call myself a man if I couldn't take care of my elderly grandmother. I lawyered up. Sent a cease and desist letter regarding the trespassing and defamation. That finally got Sarah's attention. She called me screaming about how I was turning a family matter into a legal issue. I recorded the call, legal in my state, where she admitted to lying about my promises and entering my home without permission. But the real hero of this story? Grandma. She was furious when she saw the Facebook post. Turns out, Sarah had been telling Grandma a completely different story, that I had offered to convert the basement and was now backing out, leaving Grandma homeless. When Grandma learned the truth, she went full grandma mode. She called a family meeting at her apartment. Not at my house, not at Sarah's, but her turf. She laid out everything with receipts, literally. She had printed emails, text messages, and even recorded phone calls. Turns out Grandma is more tech-savvy than we thought. The evidence was damning. 1. Emails from Sarah from 6 months ago discussing how expensive her rent was getting. 2. Texts to Grandma about how Michael's house is so big for just one person. 3. A recorded call where Sarah mentioned that if Grandma moved in with me, she could help supervise the situation by moving in too. 4. Screenshots of apartment listings Sarah had been viewing in expensive neighborhoods, with notes about being priced out. Then Grandma dropped the bomb. She'd already put down a deposit at a beautiful senior living community. She'd been planning this for months, saving money, touring places, making arrangements. Sarah knew this and was trying to sabotage it. Grandma had emails from Sarah criticizing her choice, saying the senior community was giving up, and that family should take care of family. Sarah had even called the community pretending to be Grandma to try to cancel her application. Fortunately, they had security protocols and called Grandma to verify. The room went silent. Then Sarah tried one last manipulation. But the money you're wasting on that place could go to your grandchildren. Michael has a whole house just sitting there. Grandma's response was legendary. My money is not your inheritance preview, Sarah. And Michael's house is not your free housing solution. I worked my entire life to afford the retirement I want, not to fund your lifestyle. Sarah turned to the family for support, but the emails and recordings had turned everyone against her. Even her staunchest supporters couldn't defend her anymore. She stormed out, but not before Grandma delivered one final blow. And Sarah, the $500 I've been giving you monthly to help with expenses? That ends now. Consider it motivation to solve your housing situation honestly. The room erupted. Nobody knew Grandma had been financially supporting Sarah. Turns out Sarah had been receiving this help for over a year while simultaneously planning to take over my house. The aftermath. Several family members apologized to me directly. Sarah is barely speaking to anyone after her schemes were exposed. A mom admitted she'd been influenced by Sarah's constant pressure and apologized for giving her my spare key. I've installed a better security system and cameras around my property. Sarah had to take down her Facebook post after Grandma threatened legal action for using her image without permission. But here's where it gets interesting. Last week, Grandma called and asked if she could see my basement, not to move in, but because she was curious about this space that caused so much drama. She came over, we had tea, and she absolutely loved my setup. She even played some retro games on my arcade cabinet. She's surprisingly good at Pac-Man. As we sat in my basement, Grandma told me something that broke my heart. She said Sarah's pressure had been making her question her own judgment. She'd started to wonder if she was being selfish for wanting to maintain her independence, if she was a burden for not wanting to move in with family. The whole experience had been incredibly stressful for her. She then asked if I'd be willing to help her set up something similar in her new apartment at the senior community, a small gaming area where she could play with visiting grandkids. I'm going over this weekend to help her pick out a TV and maybe set up a simple console. The conversation I thought would happen through manipulation and force is now happening naturally. Grandma and I are discussing me being her emergency contact, helping with doctor's appointments, and yes, even having a guest space for if she ever needs to stay over. But it's on our terms, not Sarah's. We even laughed about converting part of the basement into a guest suite, not because anyone pressured us, but because it might be nice for when she visits. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Sarah, meanwhile, is scrambling to find housing. Turns out her grand plan backfired spectacularly. She'd already given notice on her apartment, assuming she'd be living in my house by now. Without Grandma's monthly support and facing market rate rent, she's had to drastically adjust her expectations. Last I heard, she was couch surfing and looking at studio apartments way outside her budget. She tried reaching out to me once, asking if I'd consider renting her a room, just temporarily. I referred her to some apartment listings and wished her luck. Final update, 3 months later. I promised I was done updating, but what happened last week was too incredible not to share. Consider this the epilogue to this family drama. Grandma has been living in her senior community for 2 months now and absolutely thriving. She's made friends, joined a book club, and even started a weekly poker game that's apparently getting quite competitive. She's become something of a social butterfly, organizing movie nights and leading a walking group. I visit every Sunday, and we've had more quality time together than ever before. Our Sunday routine has become sacred. I pick her up, we go to lunch at this little diner she loves, then we either go shopping or back to my place where she thoroughly destroys me at various video games. She's expanded beyond Pac-Man to Mario Kart, and she's ruthless with those blue shells. Sarah eventually found an apartment, but it's been a struggle. She's working 2 jobs to afford rent and has been notably absent from family gatherings. When she does show up, there's this awkward tension that everyone pretends not to notice. She's lost weight, looks tired, and the designer clothes have been replaced with more practical attire. Last week was Grandma's 79th birthday. The family decided to throw her a party at her new place, in the community center. It was beautiful, her new friends mixed with family, everyone having a great time. Grandma was glowing, holding court like the queen she is. Sarah showed up late, looking exhausted and somewhat defeated. She'd brought a small gift, nothing extravagant, which was unusual for her. She mostly kept to herself, sitting in the corner and barely engaging with anyone. Halfway through the party, Sarah pulled me aside. I expected another confrontation, but instead, she broke down. The past 3 months had been a wake-up call. Living paycheck to paycheck, struggling with bills, realizing how much she'd taken for granted, it had humbled her. She told me about working double shifts, about choosing between gas and groceries, about the humiliation of having her card declined at the grocery store. She'd been living in a bubble, supported by Grandma's money and the assumption that family would always bail her out. She apologized. A real apology, not the manipulative, "I'm sorry you feel that way" nonsense. She admitted she'd been drowning financially and saw my house as her life raft. She'd convinced herself that making me Grandma's caretaker was somehow noble, that she was helping the family while solving her own problems. She acknowledged how twisted that was. "I turned Grandma into a pawn," she said. "I was so desperate that I convinced myself it was for her benefit when really I was just trying to take advantage of both of you. I told myself I was being smart, strategic, but I was just being a parasite." She talked about the months of planning, how she'd driven by my house multiple times, fantasizing about living there. How she'd researched property values and convinced herself she was entitled to space in my home because family helps family. She admitted to practicing her arguments in the mirror, planning how to guilt-trip me if I resisted. I won't lie, part of me wanted to stay angry. The violation of trust, the months of manipulation, the character assassination on social media, it all still stung. But I could see she was genuinely remorseful. We talked for an hour. She showed me her budget, her struggles, her fears about the future. For the first time in years, I saw my sister as a person, not just the family manipulator. Here's where Grandma proves she's the real MVP of this family. She'd been watching our conversation from across the room. She came over, sat between us, and said, "Now this is the birthday gift I wanted, my grandchildren acting like adults." She then revealed she'd been planning something. Remember all that money she saved by not going into the expensive assisted living facility Sarah had picked out? She'd set it aside. She offered Sarah a one-time gift, enough to cover her security deposit and first month's rent on a better apartment, closer to her work. Not a loan, not a recurring thing, but a reset button. The conditions were simple. 1. Sarah had to apologize to me publicly. She did, right there at the party. 2. She had to respect everyone's boundaries going forward. 3. She had to attend financial counseling, Grandma's already researched programs. 4. She had to volunteer at a senior center for 6 months to understand what real elder care means. Sarah cried. I might have teared up a little too. She stood up and addressed the whole party, apologizing for her behavior and specifically for trying to manipulate the family's love for Grandma. It was awkward, but necessary. But Grandma wasn't done. She turned to me and said, "And you're going to help your sister move. Not financially, but physically. Be there for her move-in day. Show her that family supports each other without taking advantage." She then addressed the whole family about how this experience had taught her valuable lessons about independence, boundaries, and the difference between helping and enabling. She said she was grateful for the drama because it forced important conversations and revealed true character. As I write this, I'm sitting in my basement rec room, still intact, still mine. But now there's a pull-out couch in the corner and a small dresser. Not for Grandma, not for Sarah, but for any family member who genuinely needs a place to crash for a night or two. On my terms. The basement guest area has already been used. My cousin James lost his job and needed a place to stay for a week while attending interviews in the area. He was grateful, respectful, and even fixed my leaky faucet as a thank you. This is what family help should look like. Sarah's move-in day is next weekend. I'll be there with my truck and some friends to help. We're not back to normal. I don't think we ever will be. But we're building something new, something more honest. She sent me a text yesterday. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm grateful. I promise I'll never take your kindness for granted again. It's a start. Grandma's 79th birthday party ended with her beating everyone at poker and giving a speech about how family isn't about obligation or manipulation, but about choosing to support each other while respecting boundaries. She thanked me for standing firm and Sarah for learning from her mistakes. The best families, she said, are the ones that can survive the truth. The whole experience has changed our family dynamic. We're more honest now, more direct. The culture of guilt and manipulation that Sarah had perpetuated, and honestly, that had existed for generations, is slowly being replaced with genuine communication. So that's it. That's how a fight over a basement rec room turned into a lesson about boundaries, manipulation, and ultimately, redemption. My gaming setup remains untouched, Grandma's living her best life, and Sarah's getting a second chance. And yes, Grandma did beat me at Mario Kart last Sunday. She's getting too good at those blue shells. She's already talking about wanting to try Call of Duty next. I've created a monster. Thank you, Reddit, for being here through this journey. Your advice about standing firm while remaining compassionate helped more than you know. Sometimes the best way to help family is to refuse to enable them, and sometimes people surprise you by actually learning from their mistakes. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to practice my Mario Kart skills. Can't have a 79-year-old grandmother showing me up every week. She's already started trash-talking about the tournament she wants to organize for her 80th birthday. I have a feeling I'm going to need all the practice I can get. Edit. Since many are asking, yes, the security system was worth every penny. Not just for this situation, but for peace of mind. And yes, Grandma has agreed to a Mario Kart tournament for her 80th birthday. She's already trash-talking. Also, for those asking about Sarah's volunteer work, she started last week at a senior center, and the director already called Grandma to say Sarah is surprisingly dedicated. Growth is possible, folks.